Hi, this is Francis Almeida presenting BAO7000 Assessment 3, Problem Solving and Critique of Australian Business Scenarios based on a case study with financial data sets. My recommendations for your beverages to continue its standing in the non-alcoholic beverages market is threefold. Diversification, which is change the contents ingredients that go into the non-alcoholic drinks with compromising on its current taste. Research and development department to include nutritionists into their team who can advise on alternative ingredients. Keep the current line of product recommendations will be to produce less of the current product. It is assumed that there will be a sizable number of the consumers who will be interested in the original product, hence the idea of diversification, just like what Coca-Cola did to bring in Coke Zero and Coke No Sugar. The third recommendation will be to market both products in lines in target markets. With expansion being the keyword, the organization is being agile in the current environment. Shareholders will look favorably at this expansion. Banks will also look favorably as the existing business is primed for expansion rather than reduction. Funding will be a two-pronged funding strategy as proposed in Assessment 2. Short-term debt financing to be 60% of their total debt and 40% equity financing. With regard to the WACC table on top, as per the above table, WACC is decreasing. The company currently has a high amount of debt financing. The assumption is that due to the current situation where the RBA has been consistently reducing interest rates for the last 3 years in a row, this has contributed to reducing interest rates that has helped the WACC to decrease. The assumption is that the current WACC figure would have decreased even further in the year 2020 and 21, as the current cash rate is now at 0.10%. The graph below clearly explicates this decrease. With this current situation, the company can, 1, reinvest the reserve that it has held to manage future interest rates rising. Interest rate rises by utilizing the reserves to pay down its debt and set the company on a path of early termination of loans. And the other strategy would be to pay down debt in a staggered fashion and invest in available reserves to fund expansion of the business due to its strategy to diversify. It is a good thing. Valuation of the company will increase as the debt is being managed well. With the above two strategies, the organization can now reduce its need to borrow at higher levels and in the process manage its limits and build an equity position. This is based on obviously the formulas and the data given to us for the calculation on the Black-Scholes option calculator. The call price there based on that information is 11.27. Based on the above scenario, I would encourage the management to favorably consider the current call price in a positive light as the volatility goes up only when it reaches 32% with none of the other variables changed. The assumed market volatility is already on the high side. Hence, this provision helps mitigate the fact that in the current economic environment, they are well placed to manage and soften the blow if by chance the volatility increases further due to that fact, the volatility is assumed at a high 26%. The risk-free interest rate of 0.01 is a reasonable assumption, considering that the current cash rate on borrowings with no immediate sign of interest rates rising. Interest rates will hold good for the next 24 days as the federal election is still 4 weeks away. Hence, it is safe to assume that interest rates will not change before the 24-day expiry date. The dividend yield is a very normal dividend yield of 10%, which can only trend upwards, thereby making the call option even more profitable, considering the other variables discussed above. With the sensitivity analysis, I would encourage management to do a sensitivity analysis. I would encourage the company to do that for the following reasons. Acts as an in-depth analysis and study of different variables and their behaviors, usually leads to more reliable predictions, helps decision makers identify where to improve in future, adds credibility to any economic model by testing it across a wide range of possibilities, and shows how responsive the output is to changes in specific values. There are some disadvantages. Outcomes are all based on assumptions on top of historical data, which makes them susceptible to being incorrect. Looking at each factor individually doesn't allow us to analyze the interaction and correlation between variables, as well as any effect it may have. I have put together a sensitivity analysis based on a profit of 100 increasing in multiples of 100 with a WACC at 6%, a growth 3%, and a terminal value calculated accordingly. And that's the figure which I will attach in my assessment Dropbox. That's the WACC formula calculation that I've used as per the assumptions. And that is pretty much obviously from the YouTube videos that I've also seen and referenced with the calculation of WACC. With the financing options, including long-term and short-term considerations, as recommended in Assessment 2, I recommend a 60-40 split with their financing options, 60% short-term debt finance and 40% equity finance. This balance lets the organization manage and control ownership. Profitability, return on equity is 50.85% as per the data that was given to us in Assessment 2. With the current ROE, EOP beverages are performing well. They are in a good position to maintain the confidence of their current shareholders. The efficiency ratios, return on assets being 7.31% and ROA of 5% is considered good. Hence, EOP need to be able to sustain and grow their ROA. Valuation of the firm based again on the figures that were given to us in the previous assessment. The price per share, which is P/S, is at 5.22. This is a good outcome for the business. As per industry standards, the ratio of 1 and 2 are good. Price to book value ratio, market price per share, book value per share. Traditionally, any value under 1.0 is good. We've got 10.68 based on those figures that are given. EOP are a highly valued stock based on this ratio. The ratios in the past slide will favorably assist EOP with equity financing. I would also consider short-term financing facilities from the bank with a term of 7 years. This can be in the form of equipment financing for the purpose of adding on machinery due to the increase in production with the expansion into the global market. With a reasonable net income of 10.28, I assume though critical information is not provided around what type of facilities they currently have, the organization will be able to cover the debt service ratios that banks will look favorably to lend. Though we do not know the credit rating of the organization, there are a few positives that lending institutions look at. That is the cash flow position. In this case, EOP Beverages has a good cash flow good operating cash flow of 10.24 billion and a leverage-free cash flow of 12.03 billion. That suggests that they have a good control of their accounts payable and receivables and don't need to depend on high interest overdraft facilities and limits. And these are all figures, of course, based on the previous assessment that was provided to us. Risk factors. Some of the business risks that EOP will face are changes in consumer tastes. Consumer tastes are so powerful that they can change how businesses conduct their activity. Because consumers are more concerned about healthy eating habits, it is important for EOP to include nutritional information for all their products. Change in regulations. Regulation increases cost for the business, and this leads to an increase in prices that the business charges to customers. In general, an increase in price will lead to a decrease in demand for the business, goods and services. This leads to decreased revenue. Evolving demographic trends. This is a big one. Manufacturers have had to adjust as beverage consumers have become more discerning in their purchases from their products. Basic formulation to the more sustainable or protective packaging. Technological capabilities and market requirements. Companies including EOP will need to invest in relevant technical capabilities, including the ability to develop new products, processes and technological knowledge to obtain higher levels of organizational efficiency. Some of the financial risks that EOP will face are high debt. EOP will need to manage its debt levels to manage its repayments and business expenses. There needs to be a balance in spending and investment strategy. Smart investments need to be made for which data needs to be relied upon, and this ties in with the business risk. Changes in interest rates are, for the last 3 years, money has been cheap. However, that's going to be a situation which is going to change as per the economic analysts of the different banks and other finance industries who have come up saying that this is going to happen sooner rather than later. Some of the liquidity risks that EOP face are unfavorable economic conditions. This is linked and affected by both business risk and financial risk. They are relevant to each other. Demand and supply of materials can affect and influence consumer spending. Unemployment, like what we have seen during the pandemic, government spending to resurrect the economy can have its effect on how the government recoups funds, which can be in the form of higher taxes, for example. This will cause instability and reduce consumer spending power and change consumer spending habits, leading to lower demand for EOP's products. This results in lower revenue, affecting the ability to pay down debt and increase liquidity and equity. Gap between the demand and supply. Lack of demand forces the asset price to fall. Hence, this inefficiency may result in liquidity risk. Hence, this risk is linked to the company's equity financing strategy. Share price is driven down as consumers spend less, resulting in the loss of brand value as the organization may be forced to reduce prices due to the increased demand. High debt that does not fit the asset value. Building and machinery owned by the company goes lower in value when compared to the debt they owe for the asset. Ethical considerations. Food businesses have the capacity to exercise social and moral values. food businesses, especially global corporations, can transform societies in ways that may be socially beneficial or harmful. So they are responsible for that. Food businesses, like all business, are economic commercial entities. Their social and moral values are managed primarily by their leaders, like CEOs and directors. These people have the power to cause business to act in ways that change societies morally, substantially, and ethically. The primary objective of food company leaders will be to turn a profit, and there is nothing wrong with making money. Moral questions will arise, however, in the way money is made. People in food-rich environments find it difficult to control energy intake for multiple reasons, including socialization into poor dietary practice through, targeted advertising. My final recommendations. My recommendations for your beverages to continue standing in the non-alcoholic beverages market is as follows. Diversification, which I've spoken about, where they are able to manage their non-alcoholic drinks without compromising on its current taste. Keep the current line of products without changing the branding or the names of the products. Recommendation will be to produce less of the current products. The third recommendation will be market both products in target markets. Now with this new line, less sugar ingredients, the opportunity for the company is to go big in its distribution and footprint into countries that have a similar standing as the Australian government. And of course, the other recommendation is the financing, 60% debt financing and 40% equity financing. In conclusion, the business is expanding by diversification and increasing its footprint globally, which will lead to better financial results. Thank you very much.